Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for June 17th, 2019. I'm Scott. I go by TanNewt Online, and I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work full-time on CircuitPython, as I have been for almost the last 3 years. Uh, been working on that. Give Adafruit lots of props for their support of the project. Um, this is our weekly meeting. It happens at 11 a.m. ish Pacific time every Monday. That is 2 p.m. Eastern time. It happens on the Adafruit Discord server. And everyone is welcome to join the meeting and the server. You can go to the URL adafru.it/discord to join. Um, we have text channels that we're in all week long, and we are in the voice chat during the meeting for that. This meeting is run in. This meeting is recorded. Let me say that first. So I'm recording both my Discord screen and the audio, so be aware of that. If you don't if you don't have a mic or anything, let us know that you're lurking. That will cue us to either read off notes that you put into the shared doc, or we will just skip over you as we do some portions that I'll talk about just a little bit. So just be aware that it is recorded. It is recorded so that it's posted on a bunch of podcast services and on YouTube. So if you want to catch up from missing a meeting, let us know. Or check out the recordings from the previous week. And you can go back in time as far as you like. We have somewhere out like 80 recordings now. So beware that it's a lot of content. This meeting is run in 5 parts. We start with a community news section that Phil from Adafruit runs. And then from there we do kind of a statistics view of the health of the CircuitPython project, both the core C code and the libraries that complement that. After that, we do hug reports, which is a chance to say thank you to the folks for the work that they've been doing. Just anyone for any awesome things that you want to highlight. So that's what hug reports is. We'll do that as a round robin. So I will start. The host starts as an example, and then we go down the list of folks in the voice channel and loop around. And that's when you can tell us, hey, I'm lurking, and we'll skip over you. Or if you're text only, we'll read it off. Or if you're not even able to make the meeting, we can read it off for you as well. The next section is status updates, and it's done as a round robin as well. You take a little bit of time to say, hey, this is what I've been working on, and this is what I plan on working on in the coming week. It's a great way to make sure that everybody is on the same page as to what's happening, who's working on what, and it's a chance to also say give any tips or tricks for things that people are trying to work on. And then lastly, we have a section that we lovingly call In the Weeds, which is a chance for any longer form discussion that may have kind of started during a status updates, but we want to wait till the end when we can really discuss some technical details. So if you have topics for In the Weeds, drop them in the CircuitPython text channel, which is the one that I keep track of during the meeting, and or put them in the notes doc. That's a great way to put In the Weeds as well. So with that, let's kick it over to Phil for community news.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right. So I wrapped up a lot of the Adafruit AdaBox stuff. So I had some more time to work on CircuitPython stuff. That being said, AdaBox 12 is out. It's shipping. So if you're one of the people who has that, congratulations. You might want to cover your ears for a second because I'm going to talk about what's in it.
Spoiler alerts.
Spoiler alert. AdaBox 12 is a iGamer, and that means there's going to be thousands of people out there that can do Python games. So as much as we've all been waiting for to do something with CircuitPython and have thousands of people ready to gobble up projects, it's here. If you look at some of the previous things that happened with PyPortal, for instance, as soon as that went out, there was tons and tons of projects that the community made. It's still hard to keep up with it. Check it out, and I'll put in links. I'll probably put in these links into the chat as soon as I'm done, because I'm going to get through this stuff kind of fast. Next up, EuroPython 2019 attendees get a CircuitPython powered Pew Pew game. Radomir, who a lot of you all know, is going to be there. They need some help with the workshops. The links and more are in the notes and also in our newsletter, and I'll also put that in the chat in just a couple of minutes. 8/8/2019 is CircuitPython Day. There has been some activities already. Folks just asking, hey, I'm going to do like an event. It's going to be on Eventbrite. And Adafruit, can you send us some stickers or some boards? Answers yes, yes, and yes. And we also have an email address, circuitpythonday@adafruit.com. If anyone wants to help coordinate or do something in their area, or what we like to do, lots of stuff online, let us know what you're up to. We'll also have more blog posts. Congratulations to Andreas, who did a video not too long ago about Arduino and the move to MicroPython CircuitPython. It's going to be his #1 video in just a few minutes, I think. And that's out of all of his videos the last 5 to 10 years. So that just means a lot of people are interested in learning, maybe come from an Arduino world and want to learn about this MicroPython CircuitPython thing. So if all of us just like go to the video, it'll probably be his #1 video in just a few minutes. There'll be a video in just a few minutes that we're releasing. It's the super top secret preview of the Bluetooth Circuit Playground Express. So that adds Bluetooth to Circuit Playground. A lot of people want it, and we're working on it. A lot of updates on CircuitPython.org, specifically Blinka. Thanks, Melissa. You can see some of the new boards there and more. If you have a single board computer, a Linux board, and you want to make sure Blinka runs on it, which is CircuitPython for Linux, and you don't see it on that list, you can help out, or you can just let us know, and we'll probably just pick up the board and get it going. Discord offers server boosts. I mentioned this last week, and also it's in I think a few different places from the newsletter to I think our show. Ask an Engineer. We're up to 6 boosts right now. I think if we have 4 more, that means we get higher quality audio, a server banner, and bigger uploads. So I think most of our team will probably get it to 10, but if you have a ability to boost the server, I think some people already participate in Discord in other ways, and when you have like a membership, they give you a little boost ability. I'll put the link in there. And then last up, this is just company news. If anyone is a PHP developer and wants to live and work in New York City, Adafruit's hiring. And I have an email address for that, apply@adafruit.com. We're a cool company. Get talk to people who work here, ask how it is. But if you know PHP, a lot of our stuff is based on PHP, and that's what we're looking for. We like remote folks, but this one in particular has to be a job in New York City, which ain't so bad. It's a fun city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
It's a
community
cool
news.
place.
Yeah.
I gotta visit soon.
And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Let's move on to the state of CircuitPython and the libraries after I take a time code. This is a statistics overview of the health of the project, meant kind of as a metrics-driven sort of thing, week to week. We do it in kind of 3 sections: overview, or overall, core, and libraries. So I'll start with overall. I'll take another time code to be good about it. So overall, we had 13 pull requests merged in the last week from 5 different authors: Brent Radomir, myself, Mr. McWethy, and Dan Halbert. We had 4 reviewers: myself, Katney, Lydia, and Dan. So thank you to everybody who is author and reviewer. Typically here we say, hey, reminder, reviewing's a great way to get started. So if you see a pull request that's open and you have the devices that need that the pull request would use, try the new code and see if it works for you, and then just chime in on the pull request to say like, hey, I tried this and it works just fine, or it fixed the bug, and let us know. That's super helpful, and it's a great way to get started. Issues wise, we had 17 closed issues by 10 people, 4 open by 4 people, so we're way down on issues. We're typically right about even, so 17 closed is awesome. And then overall, we have a beta of 4.1 out, which has a lot of performance improvements. So if you're doing any display work in particular, check that out. But yeah, we want to be quick about having kind of adding features to our stable branches. So this is the first one of those. We'll have some discussions about what the next one will be, but this is the first one. And give it a shot. I think 401 itself has been going pretty well. So really feeling good about this kind of stable phase that we're in right now. All right. And with that, I'll go on to the core. Thank you, Katney, for taking notes. For the core, we had 7 pull requests merged from myself, Dan, and Radomir Deshipu. 2 reviewers, myself and Dan. We have 7 open pull requests. They're listed in the notes here. We had 5 closed issues by 2 people, 4 open by 4 people, for a total of 177 open issues. So there's again a link there. We have 6 active milestones. I just added one for 4.1.0, which is like any issues that come up in our betas of that. So that's where those go, and we'll have one. We have one open there. We have 3 bug fixes in the 4xx branch, which is also interesting. And then we also have 2 issues not assigned a milestone. So those are kind of the highlights. More details are in the notes. We have download stats. We've had 67 downloads of 4.1.0 beta 0. So that's kind of low. I would expect it to be a little bit more than that. But for stable, as always, stable has 4,061 downloads. So it's always way ahead of the unstable downloads, which totally makes sense because that's where we want to see people have it. And if you're interested to see what the download stats are by language, those are in the notes docs too, but I will not read those off. Let's go to Katney for library updates.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
So over the last week, we had 6 pull requests merged by 3 authors and 3 reviewers. Our authors were Scott, Brent, and Mr. McQuethy, and our reviewers were Lady Ada, Scott, and myself. We have 31 open pull requests. A list of those are available in the notes. We have 12 issues closed by 9 people and 0 open by 0 people. So we are very net down, which is excellent, leaving us with 105 open issues. And you can see those at circuitpython.org/libraries/contributing. If you're interested in getting started with CircuitPython, the library issues are a good place to start. That same link will take you to both the list of issues on every repo and also the list of library infrastructure issues, which is to say we have a standard that we like to keep because it's easier to maintain, and there are still libraries that are not quite up to the standard. So some of that stuff is fairly simple fixes and would be a great first issue for a lot of people. Also in the notes are our new and updated libraries. There's a very short list this week, so I will read it off. Our new library is RGB LED, and we updated the PN532, ESP32 SPI, bus device, and EPD libraries. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Nice. Thank you so much, Katney. Nice job on closing 12 issues. That's great.
Thank you. I am not sure how much I helped, but thank you to everybody who was involved.
All the organizing is very helpful. All right. So let's go into Hug Reports. That was just a preview. So Hug Reports is a chance for everyone to say quick thanks to folks who have done something awesome. It's good for 2 reasons. 1, it's good to say thank you to people, and 2, it's good for us to establish what things we value within our community. So I will take a time code and start us off. My kind of habit is to get caught up on Sunday nights and take a look at what's happening. So there might be some relevance to that. So I got lots of stuff. I was very excited about all the things that are happening. So first and foremost, Carlos Diaz, also known as C47D, has been picking up more and more work. Started off by doing just our Spanish translations, but has been diving into the core of CircuitPython. So kudos to Carlos for working on the RGB status LED support. It's not checked in yet, but I'm excited to work with them to get it going hopefully next week. I'm very busy this week, but next week I hope to see that get in, if not sooner. shout out to Shaz for the performance testing between MicroPython and CircuitPython, and then Dan took a look at that and was kind of surprised that it was as bad as it turned out to be. But then Dan found some reasons why and made it a whole lot faster. So thank you to both of them. Kevin J. Walters has been just doing a great job improving our MIDI support. So there's a discussion about some changes to make it easier to switch between USB MIDI and UART MIDI. So thanks to Kevin and folks for that. Thank you to CP Forbes for adding a live directory by default. It didn't make it into the stats for the core today, but checked it in last night for thank you. So thank you to CP Forbes for doing some core work and knocking out an issue for us. Thank you to Mr. McWethy for the e-paper display library work and the subsequent release. Welcome back. Mr. McWethy contributed maybe a year or two ago now and kind of went off and was doing stuff and then has started to crop up again. So happy to see you helping out, Mr. McWethy. Thank you to Gaston Williams, aka Four Sticks, for the quick joystick driver in the community bundle. So just a shout out for folks. Just a reminder that we do have a community bundle for drivers that are like not for Adafruit products and not supported by Adafruit funded folks. So if you have devices that you like, for example, the SparkFun Quick devices, and you want to see CircuitPython drivers for those, the community bundle is a great place to put them. And I was looking through Discord, and Summersoft was a huge help for that as well. So thanks to Summersoft for helping get Four Sticks going. Thank you to Doc Malo for the ESP32 spy work. There's been huge progress made on the connectivity side through ESP, and Doc Malo has been one of the folks, not just the only one, but one of the folks that's been really helpful with that. And then lastly, thank you to Kattni and Summersoft for their continued improvements on Cookie Cutter. It's really nice to not have to worry about the tooling side of CircuitPython libraries and CircuitPython libraries in general. So you've both been doing a great job. So thank you for that. And since Lady Ada has a meeting in 8 minutes, I believe, I'm going to kick it over to her for both hug reports and status updates. You're really quiet.
So can you skip me and I'll try to fix my mic.
Okay. All right. So Lady Ada is going to try to sort her mic out. And let's go to Brent while she does that.
Hello. I have a lot of hug reports this week.
Yay.
Definitely one of them to Lady Ada for helping me bring up 2 boards last week and showing me the ropes for fabrication and then verification. This is one that goes to the people who work at Adafruit for AdaBox 12. It's a really big effort, and I sit on the floor here and I see people building this and kitting it, and then downstairs they're shipping it, and it's like a company-wide effort, and it's done until the next AdaBox. For Carter, for the Display I/O guide I was reading this morning, it's an awesome guide. I remember thinking that I wanted to read it a while back, and I never got to reading it, and I was like, well, I'll learn it eventually, and it still holds true, and it's really good, especially for 4.0, where Display I/O really came in. And then Maker Melissa for the Pi badge button code. It's part of the conference badge, and it let me get going really quickly this morning as well with something I'm working on. And to Doc Malo for the ESP32 SPI enterprise code, which is super useful because I've written a lot of libraries for Azure and Adafruit I/O and Philips Hue that use ESP32 SPI and wrap around it. So those will all get enterprise Wi-Fi connectivity once that's pulled in.
Awesome. All right. Lady Ada, how you doing? Okay.
My mic is working now. So.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I want to give a hug report. Wow, so many hug reports. Okay, Maker Melissa has just been totally walking out and doing Blinka code. It's really exciting to see more Linux boards show up on the Blinka list. We're going to be doing more and more. If people have their favorite Linux single board computer that they want to see added, open up an issue on Blinka, and we'll take a look at it. We're kind of meandering through what we think are the most popular ones, but we might have missed something. Thanks to Dan and Scott for doing Zoom update for CircuitPython. It's cool because I just finished a bunch of hardware, so I can go back and do some CircuitPython display stuff. So that's good for me. Let's see, everyone who helped out with all AdaBox 12, including guides and tutorials and documentation libraries. There's a lot of you, but thanks to everyone. Sedacious for wrapping up a whole bunch of libraries and products that we're getting into the store. So we put in the LPS 35HW, and all these new products are also coming with CircuitPython libraries that he is publishing. And I think that's all my hug reports. Plus, one general hug report to everybody in the community. I'm so excited to see how CircuitPython is evolving and taking on new hardware and showing up in places unexpected. So that's really cool. And I will pop over to my meeting. So thanks, everybody.
Do you want to do status updates?
The only status update is, we're shipping the Ada boxes. I have a new PyGamer Advanced design, which is people are testing out. It's basically the PyGamer plus a 320 by 240 display. So that'll be nice. It's a nice IPS display. We've got Brent working on the Pi Badge Wi-Fi, which also has a bigger display and also a Wi-Fi module. So that might be good for IoT connected badge projects. I brought up the first Circuit Playground Bluefruit, which is the NRF52840 based CircuitPython board. Only 1 out of 4 prototypes came back out, but I think I know why the yield was bad, and we'll be improving that. So maybe in the fall we'll have a Bluetooth CircuitPython board. So really Circuit Playground board. So really great for all-in-one battery-powered Bluetooth activity. So it'll be backwards compatible with the Circuit Playground Express. You'll be able to use it with like the Cricket and all of our add-ons. But of course, it'll be the NRF52840. And that's what I'm up to.
Sweet. Thank you so much. All right. And with that, let's skip over Carter, who's lurking, and go to see Grover.
Hello there. Well, group hug to the community as usual, and especially to the team that worked on the 4.1 beta. It's just amazing. It's going to transform a couple of my projects. Getting the display to work, an OLED display to work using frame buff with that is just sweet. It's just sweet. Anyway, a hug also to KJW for his MIDI library that he posted through Adafruit. It's the new Adafruit MIDI library. He did a really great job on that, and I learned a lot just looking through his code. It's excellent.
Awesome. All right. Charles is lurking, so we'll go to Dan.
Okay, so as Scott mentioned, thanks to Shaz for actually comparing the speed of CircuitPython versus MicroPython, which motivated us to look at what was the difference, and it was actually much simpler than we thought. And so we made an initial speed up, and there are more possibilities for even more speed ups as well. And thanks to Scott for the display I/O work, the partial updates, which also would sped up that part of CircuitPython. So now that things are just like zooming along when you want to redisplay something and display new images on the screen. And thanks to Radomir Tedeshipu for the EuroPython Pew Pew gaming badgie thing giveaway, which is really wonderful. That's a great thing to have this kind of hardware giveaway, both for the US Python show, which we did with CPXs, and for EuroPython with his project. Okay, thank you.
Sweet. Thanks, Dan. And let's go to Dishipu.
Okay. Does it work?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to Scott and Dan for the amazing work with performance improvements that really will come in handy. And that's it for me.
Sweet. Thanks for hopping in. All right. Doc Malo is text only, so I'll read theirs off. So Doc Malo says, hugs to Deshipu for the Pew Pew EuroPython giveaway. Hugs right back to Jerry, Katney, and myself for the hugs. Super appreciated. And thank you to Dan for both the BLE work and the speed up work. That's from Doc Malo, Higher Effect, and Jason P, who dropped out, are lurking. So we'll go to Jerry.
Yeah, hi. Let's see. Well, I've hugged Doc Molo for again all the ESP32 SPI work. Looking forward to checking it all out. And Summersoft for some very patient and thorough help in the Discord forums this week. It's kind of fun to watch and learn by watching. It's fun. And just a group hug. It's been a good week. You guys have done a lot of work.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. All right, let's go to Katney.
Hello. All right, so hug report to Summersoft for keeping up with bug fixes in Cookie Cutter. I keep finding them, and they keep being fixed, and it's great. To Doc Malo for getting back into the ESP32 SPI PR that we went over. We went over it a while ago, but he set the expectation that it would be a bit before he could get to it, and so it's good to see that that is now happening. To Aerofarn for submitting a PR for a NeoTrellis module. We need to sort out naming and that sort of thing, but it's always really great to see people contributing libraries and so on. To Mr. McQuarrie for the EPD work, I found a bug that I haven't tested yet, but in theory it may be fixed by what they did. So I'm looking forward to trying that out and seeing how that goes. To Roy for helping me begin work on my keynote. I am going to be keynoting Pi Ohio this year, and obviously need to start working on that. And so that's been super helpful. And one to NNJA, who is Nina, for helping me complete a task that I've been sitting on for over a month. Sometimes you need other people to help you get through things, and that was super helpful. So thank you very much to Nina for that. And that's what I have.
Sweet. Thank you, Katney. Let's go to King of North, who just has a hug report today.
Yeah. Hi there, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, just a couple of general hug reports. Just I'm glad to see that all of the learning guides keep getting updated for all the new equipment, because it was a big change from going from 3 to 4, and it's really made a difference on how I'm putting together a course that I'm going to be running up at college in the fall, which works out really well using Circuit Playground Express. So just a general hug report to that, and for everybody keeping up the good work, and also the organizational website, the CircuitPython.org site as well. That's great to have all those resources there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Excited to hear more about your course. All right, we did Lady Ada already, so we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hi. Okay. First, a hug report to Mike Barella for your help with the Odroid guide. Hug report to Lady Ada for spending some time with me trying to get by working on the Odroid, and for helping me with the fritzing issue. And then just a group hug to everyone.
Sweet. Thank you, Melissa. All right, Sedacious.
Hello. So I've got two things. One for C. Grover for helping me with some analog stuff on a project I'm working on, and another for Lady Ada for helping me on similar analog stuff and helping me figure out some ways to use my oscilloscope to get some testing done. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Nice. All right, Summersoft, I'm going to assume your text only. So I'll read Summersoft's off. After I take a time code. Summersoft says, thank you to Four Sticks on their first contribution with a SparkFun quick joystick library for the community bundle. Hug report to Shazdan and myself for the speed up work, and a general group hug. All right, and that's hug reports. I think I'm gonna let the cat out of the room, and then we'll get on the status updates. There we go. No. He changed his mind. All right. Let's go on the status updates. I'll take a time code. 2857. So status updates is kind of a software engineering thing where you take a couple minutes to talk about what you've been working on, both kind of what you did in the previous week and what you plan on doing in the coming week. It's a great way to get on the same page with folks and give tips or tricks. If any longer term discussions come up, we'll just note those down and we'll cover them in the next section. So I'll get started and we'll go. I got partial screen updating checked in thanks to Dan. And then we did a release with both that change and the performance change as 4.10 beta 0. So I babysat that on Thursday. So that's been out since Thursday. There's been a couple bugs that have cropped up from that. One of which was that the dirty rectangle tracking on tile grid, like individual tile indices, is not working correctly when you're rotating the tile grid. So like what terminal does. So that I have a fix for that. Hopefully get that in today or tomorrow. And then this weekend in Portland is the Teardown conference. So that's put on by Crowd Supply. So I'm going down there and I'm giving a presentation on Sunday on CircuitPython on the Game Boy stuff. So this week is I'm going to try to get that fix in, but then I'm going to focus on the presentation that I'm giving and probably poking at the Game Boy stuff some more, because I like to do a demo of like, look at how easy CircuitPython is, and I want to use the Game Boy to do it. So that should be recorded and should be able to share that later. So that's my week. Let's circle back and go to Brent.
Hello. Last week I did a lot of work with Lady Ada on bringing up new boards, testing the boards, and verifying that everything on the board works. She mentioned what they were earlier, so I added new pin definitions for these boards to Arduino core and the CircuitPython core, which is my first CircuitPython core contribution. And then I released full release of RGB LED and put that into the bundle, which is high-level PWM control without touching PWM out, which can be intimidating. So this week, I'm playing with the idea of adding a cursor into the PyPortal library for the Airlift Pi badge. So instead of, here's a really weird, bad picture, but instead of doing the touchscreen stuff for the PyPortal library, because it's a really good library and doesn't deserve to be rewritten. It does all the image processing stuff too for URLs. So we can like click with the D-pad and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then later this week, I'm gonna play with Google Cloud's IoT Core. It's similar to Azure's IoT Core, but for Google Cloud services. And I'm going to start looking at. Adam wrote actually a pretty good MQTT-ish client, and I'm going to try to talk to him when he's here at the factory about getting it into a real CircuitPython MQTT library, because that seems to be what he's gunning for, and I would like that as well.
Nice.
And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. Carter is lurking, so we'll go to C. Grover.
Let's see. Over the last week, I was working with my range slicer Eurorack module, and it's running, like I said before, it's running about 2 or 3 times faster with the new version or the beta version of CircuitPython. It's fantastic. Anyway, I get too excited about that stuff. But I want to encourage you to continue support for the high-speed display that I'm getting from the OLED screens. That really will transform a couple of my projects, and I'd like to see OLED support sooner than later. But I don't want it to be bogged down by potential management, like in things like Display.io does that. So if there's a way to simplify it and keep it fast, that would be really nice. I used KJW's MIDI library to build a basic MIDI sniffer, use an M4 and a custom classic MIDI interface, Featherwing, and I'll post some information about that in a minute. Performance is excellent, and I'm getting good enough response to be able to see the MIDI data streams using a REPL. And that's pretty nice for troubleshooting. I think, yeah, you can get applications that run on your computer to sniff USB MIDI, but being able to sniff classic MIDI is pretty useful at times, especially when you have old keyboards like some of mine. And as part of that, I updated a MIDI utility library that I created to include a control change controller description decoder based on the based on the MIDI standard 2.0. I added that to an existing bidirectional note value to note name and note value to frequency and note frequency to value helpers, because it's really helpful to be able to plug a frequency into it and it'll tell you what note that is or the closest note, and vice versa. So that was a kind of a fun thing to put together. So projects that are coming up, I'm going to release the final version of the library, the primary library that I used in the range slicer module. It's a hysteresis based noise reducing kind of map range tool for analog signals, and so it can get rid of noise in analog signals. It's basically quantizing the signal. But it can get rid of the noise without delays, and that's kind of handy when you're dealing with control voltage in music racks. And then I'll have the final version of the MIDI utility, and I'll post that along with the MIDI sniffer as an example code somewhere. And then I was inspired by John Park project to he built a prototype MIDI input wing, feather wing, and so I of course took it to the extreme and added TRS jacks and DIN 5 jacks and all that kind of stuff. So that'll get posted soon too. I'll post a picture here in a minute.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Thank you, C. Grover. Charles is lurking, so we're going to go to Dan.
Okay, so as we mentioned several times already, the 4.1 beta has a speed up of basically 5x for CPU bound CircuitPython, which was changed just by changing a compile time option, which makes the core virtual machine that executes CircuitPython bytecodes run faster, a lot faster. It sort of dispatches, when it gets an opcode, it decides what to do much more quickly. And further, it looks like also comparing with MicroPython, we could get another 2 to 3x speed up by calling our background tasks less often. And so we're working on that, but it's a lower priority than the 5x one. But we hope to maybe get at least another 2x speed up easily with a very minor amount of work. I'm just about finished with BLE Scanner, which looks for BLE beacons and advertising. And that'll be in the library. That'll be in the next beta of some kind. And I hope to have a beta with this edition. And there's both core changes and CircuitPython library changes. And then there's more to do in BLE. There's a lot more to do still. We have plenty of things. You can look at the issue list. So that's what's up right now. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. All right, let's go to Deshipu.
Okay, so I'm back in the CircuitPython land.
Yay.
I just got a PyGamer today in the mail, so I'm working on it even as we speak. I just made a pull request. You probably saw that just now for adding PyGamer super to the state library. So that basically that was basically working. It only adds the interpreting the analog joystick also as arrow keys, so that all the games will work with the analog joystick. And by the way, the X and Y are reversed in the board definition, so we probably want to fix that at some point. And right now, I also, just before the meeting, I did the bouncing balls demo, but using only display I/O, not using the state library. So the display I/O is fast enough for that right now.
Yay.
So next step is to rewrite the Jumping Wire, this platformer game, and Space Invaders game to use display I/O. We will see how that goes, and then maybe some more games. I want to write an Adafruit learn guide for the bouncing balls at least, using the display I/O because stage at this point becomes obsolete. Right, it's less powerful and pretty much the same speed right now.
Mm-hmm.
So probably display IO is the way forward.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you, Dishipu. All right, I'll read Doc Malo off after taking the time code, of course. Doc Malo says, finally got my test environment working at home again. Woo. And got the changes that I reviewed with Kattni and Brent Rue submitted for the ESP32 SPY library. So that's Doc Malo's update. Hair Effect is lurking, so let's go to Jerry.
Hey, so major accomplishment is I actually cleaned off my office and workspace this week. Spent a lot of time on it.
Yay.
At least I can tell. And there's actually some vacant surface space. I kind of reached gridlock, and it was getting really hard to move work in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that took a lot of time. But I did it. There was a question come up in Discord about the PN532 NFC reader. And I'd played with them a while ago, and it worked okay, and I hadn't done much with it. So it got my interest, and did a lot more with it, and found out that there's a really nice new example that hadn't actually been released yet, but it is now, for using the MyFair versus the NTAG 203, and that was part of the confusion that was occurring. But I just learned a lot more about the various cards and types of devices and what you have to tweak to read them, and it's actually pretty cool. Now I got to figure out how to use it. What to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, Eternal Hope. I really do want to spend some time this week checking out Doc Molo's changes and on the ESP32 SPI and continuously on my list is to actually learn how to use Display IO.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, thank you as always, Jerry. All right, let's go to Kattni.
Hello. Okay, so last week, worked through a bunch of possibilities for how to do a debug version of the bus device library, and eventually came to the conclusion that doing subclassing or any other form of that sort of thing was actually going to be incredibly complicated because of how the debug works in the last function in bus device, and then also came to the conclusion that if we did it all using subclassing, it would not be a drop-in replacement anymore, and that really the easiest way for this to be used is to simply download it, rename it to bus device, and then drop it on the board to have a literal drop-in replacement for it. And so instead of any kind of whatever, we came to the conclusion that it actually just makes sense to duplicate the library. So chose a route, went with it. That's mostly finished, worked on that. Friday and over the weekend, I worked on code for Noe and Pedro for a definitely not a lightsaber light wand. Continued work on PyBadger and discussed the intent of PyBadger, which is incidentally more badge focused. The name came before that. Will include all components for simple use, and will also make it super simple to turn your board into a badge with your name on it, etc. Well, so this week, today's Library Monday, as always. I'm going to be over the next week or two at some point helping sort out another person who created a library that is better in the community bundle. So we need to sort out getting that there. Finish debug bus device, which is mostly done. I just need to go through and actually, well, two things: test it and make sure that all the documentation and all that stuff transferred over. Continue work on PyBadger. It got a little more complicated because we are now making variations on a theme with different size displays and want it to be dynamic. So the code that's in there right now is hard coded to the current PyBadge and PyGamer, which are the same size screens. And there are already multiple iterations in the works that have different size screens. So we need to make something that's centering text. Can't be based on hard coding. It has to be based on the size of the display divided by 2, and then figure out at that point where the text needs to go. So either it needs to be where you set the size of the display yourself, which I don't particularly like. I want it to be simpler, or the code gets super complicated because it's doing all of the math for you, which is really the route that I want to go. So that's going to be not quite as simple as originally intended, but I think will be much better in the end. I still have blog posts for PyCon to do. Yes, still. I need to finish processing the photos from PyCon. I started that. There's photos of the open spaces of, I don't remember if there's any of the sprints. I think there are. And some group photos of the team that went that PT wanted. So I need to get those to him. Doing forum support on Tuesday and Thursday. Be updating a guide with a new wiring diagram. We have a community member now who's working on some very pretty wiring diagrams for us, or pinout diagrams rather, of various boards. Just easier to visualize than it is with just seeing what the pins are written out in text. And then I want to test the EPD update on the 2.13-inch e-ink display. It was having issues where it was not filling anything. It would do every other line. So it just looked like a series of lines instead of a full rectangle. It turns out it was a bug with that particular display, not a bug with the code or software or anything like that, which took a while to figure out. But I want to test it because Mr. McWethy seems to think that it's possible that it's fixed, but doesn't have that display to test with. So I still have it wired up even from the last time I used it, so it should be easy test. And that is where I'm at.
Nice. Thank you, Katney. All right, King of North is lurking. We already did Lady Ada, so we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. Okay, so last week I did the Odroid finishing touches in Blinka. I finished the Odroid C2 guide, and that got published this weekend. I started adding Dragon Board 410C to Blinka and working on a guide for that. I tested some ILI 9341 display issues regarding the terminal IO, which I think you talked about already, and I did some Blinka website updates. This week, I will be working on getting the Dragon Board 410C added to Blinka and working on the guide for that. I still want to actually test that the Orange Pi R1 spine UART stuff works fine. I have some more Blinka website updates to do, which is mostly adding all the Raspberry Pi stuff that we already support. And I have the Portland Teardown 2019 starting on Friday.
Woohoo. It's going to be exciting.
Yes, it will.
All right. Let's go to Sedacious.
Howdy. So last week I worked on the updates to the BD3491FS driver. That's a so-called audio processor chip made by Rome. It's kind of like a equivalent of I guess you could build like a simple receiver from it. So the update to the RevB has added 3-band EQ support. So I updated drivers to get that working. Afterwards, I started working on a tester for that same board, or rather the tester code. And as part of that, Lamore showed me some how to adapt some cool code that is able to assess the frequency of a signal and voltage levels and all that stuff. So, able to quantify a analog signal is the way you want it to be. So that was really fun. Also got to do some scope stuff, oscilloscope stuff in measuring all that, and that was really interesting and fun because I hadn't used mine much. Also, afterwards, I passed the rest of the testing stuff for that off to Lady Ada and moved on to the DS3502, which is an I2C potentiometer board designed by Katney. It's a very cool little board. If you want to not have to turn a knob to change your potentiometer and instead want to, send some I2C commands, this is what you'll need. So I finished the drivers for that and worked on the tester code and tester PCB for that. It was relatively simple, got out pretty quick. I assembled some VCNL 4040s, also designed by Katney, to work on the Arduino driver. So I'll be doing that this week. Working this week, I'll be working on the guide for the DS3502 Arduino driver for the VCNL 4040. Also testing a new OLED breakout that I've been sitting on for a little bit, and doubtless other stuff as well. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Audacious. All right. Last but not least, we have Summersoft, who's text only today. So I will read that off. Summersoft says, last week did the on Cookie Cutter Adafruit CircuitPython, fix some formatting issues. For Rosy Pi, I finished the Rosy side physical test framework. This allows tests written outside of the core repo to run on the Raspberry Pi while controlling the board being tested. There's a sweet log at this GitHub gist, which I will post. Also on Rosy, started on the RPi config to run Rosy app and Rosy Pi. Researched and defined some architecture details, which database, Sinatra versus Flask, etc. This week, more work on Rosy Pi and Rosy app. Write some actual tests and finish the RPi config and possibly set up an Ansible/Terraform for the config. All right, and that's Summersoft's update, and that's the last update of status updates. I don't think we had anybody come in the middle. So lastly, we'll go into the weeds. Into the weeds is our section for discussing any sort of long form topics that have come up or people want to discuss. If you have topics for it, whenever in the meeting beforehand, feel free to drop them in the text channel and let us know. We'll snag those and put those in the notes. Or you can access the note stock directly and add it to the list there. So first up, I think this is Deshipu's, but we have a bullet point for discussion of accessing pixels of on-disk bitmap and converting it to a in-memory bitmap.
Yeah, so this is basically two things rolled into one. So I tried to use on-disk bitmap for in the jumper wire for the level definition bitmap.
Okay.
Because I know this is not the usual way you use bitmaps, but it's useful in this case. And it can be on disk bitmap because you don't care that much about speed, about rendering it on the screen in this case, and then you can have really large level for you. But while normal bitmap has the accessors for the pixels, the on disk bitmap doesn't seem to have them. So it would be nice to add them. And then it occurred to me that once we have them, or maybe if we add a special method to copy the on-disk bitmap to a normal bitmap, we could drop the BMP the image loader library completely and have only one code for loading bitmaps.
But no, I on-disk bitmap is intentionally for large bitmaps that are like full color.
No, of course. Yeah. But I mean, we already have code for reading BMP files in there. So why not just add a method that makes a normal bitmap from it and reuse the same code for loading the sprites and everything else? Then we have half the bugs we could have, basically.
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at is that the image load library supports more things than the core C code does.
For instance, what's that?
Like the only way to support indexed bitmaps is with the image load library.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right there, like.
Okay, so scratch that. That's a bad idea. But I could I guess I could work on the accessors for the on-disk bitmap, so I can add that if you think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
indexed bitmaps wouldn't be that hard to add, though, would it?
What?
Indexed bitmaps wouldn't be that hard to add to the C code.
It wouldn't, but like, why do you need it as C code when you could have it as Python code?
I think in general the thought is, I don't know, I don't understand the motivation for having image loading code spread across more places than necessary.
Well, the motivation to having on disk bitmap was being able to put a full color image on like a Halloween or a PyPortal, where you, like as a background or something, where you don't want like the huge footprint of a full color BMP in memory as you're trying to do other stuff.
Right? And so that's the only reason for its existence. I don't know.
I believe so.
Whatever, it's fine. Okay, all right.
Well, it's a memory optimization, right? Like.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I get that. Cool.
Yeah, which is why image load is so index color specific, because those are the things that you can store in memory. And like on-disk bitmap has a huge caveat around the access pattern, because it's really costly to go from different sectors of the file, which we found out. Which I've kind of bent over backwards in the like partial updating code to make sure that when we're getting pixels out of the bitmap, we always go in row order.
That makes sense. So I guess one thing that I kind of see maybe on horizons, I don't, me or someone else will ever get back to JPEG support, but if that does happen, it seems like it would want to live in CLAN, and then it would kind of continue this spread of stuff across different domains. But maybe we can burn that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, well, I think like you there's the trade-off between pulling it straight off disk and having it in memory. And I think one of the challenges with any format where it is decompression, like that makes it even harder to, like, is it in memory or is it on disk? And if it's in memory, it's giant, right? Like,
yeah.
So I don't know.
We'll figure it out. That's fine.
Yeah, I think Radomir, starting with just pixel level access to on-disk bitmap like makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you.
It's just done as the subscript, so sub SCR.
Yeah. I will just look at the default bitmap, the normal bitmap, and I will copy that basically.
Yep, sounds good. All right, let's go to Deshipu's second comment.
Yeah, so continuing on display IO. It right now defaults to about 30 frames per second, which is good for most use cases, for user interfaces and so on. But often in games you don't need that high a frame rate, and you really want to have the frame rate synchronized with how fast your game is running, because you don't want to move things by half a pixel per frame, for instance, because then it really looks bad. It looks jumpy. So I think it would be nice to have some control about for the frame rate, to at least to be able to limit it to something like 12 frames per second or 24 frames per second. I found that for most sprite-based games in this resolution, 12 frames per second is more than enough. So
yeah, so I've thought some about this, and it's probably something I'll get to once I'm back from Teardown. The Game Boy is an interesting case because it has its screen. So part of what I've been thinking is that like displays have a natural refresh rate, right? Like, it can vary with the displays we have full control over. Like, for example, I was looking at like the ILA 9341, and you can clock it as slow as like 60 basically, or as fast as like 111 hertz. So I think one thing I want to do is when we do display initialization, it's a giant constructor right now, but I think I also want to give it a notion of, or knowledge of, what the native frame rate of the screen is. So for example, what I think we should do for our drivers by default is configure them to be at 60. And then what I want to add, I think, to the display itself is like, we have wait for frame, but I think what we need to say like, starting now, don't update without me calling wait for frame. And then you can, at that point, you can also say like a divisor on the native frame rate of the display. So if your frame's running at 60, but you only run your your game logic at 15, that's where you would say 15. And then every time you wait for frame, you're basically like, in that case, you're doing a division by 4. So your wait for frame call would actually wait for 4 frames of the actual display for every cycle.
Okay, but then if you have a device with, say, 50 hertz frame rate, then the game will become easier on it because it will be slightly slower.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. This is why it hasn't been done yet. Right. So instead of doing it as a divisor, you need to do it as a like proper frame rate, like just a frames per second number.
Yeah, probably.
And then you need to figure out like how to skip some frames to get an approximation of that. Yeah, it's worth thinking about. And then the other thing is that like game logic, the amount of time game logic can take to run can vary as well. And I think basically what Pico 8 does, and what I was thinking we would do, is we basically keep a track for the counts of refreshes of both the game code, which is basically calling wait for frame, and the display itself saying it did a frame refresh. And if you get too far behind, like you'll start dropping updates to the display until the game logic catches back up. And then you can also have a like, if I get over 20 frames behind or whatever, then like throw an exception and let me know, and like build ways of managing that for like,
yeah, that makes sense.
For like, you know, like one example is like with the way that the Celeste code works is like you do a big screen update when you load a new level because the level itself is static. So potentially you get a frame or two behind, so you may drop. You may call the game logic more than once, or you may also choose to like, if we can make wait for frame, say like reset frame counter or something as a keyword arg that basically says, I know I was slow, right? Because I just did a level load, but like from now on, reset that counter so that I know that I'm in sync again.
I think we should write a few more games to get a feel of what we actually need there.
Sure. Yeah, and I think like thinking about the display driver side is something that's still relatively new too. Like I haven't actually gone in and audited the init sequences to actually understand what frame rates they're starting the displays at. And then at least for the pipe portal, we have access to the tear enable line as well. So instead of doing it as like, we know what it was initialized at and we just kind of track the refresh rate on our own, we could actually get a signal coming in from the display for exactly when it's updating, which is kind of interesting too.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there's the displays that are doing the RGB stuff. So like the hyperpixel, which is Pimeroni's thing, is like it's not using a display that has its own RAM, so it's constantly spitting pixels out back at the display. And like, how does that change synchronization stuff as well? So yeah, it's interesting, and it's definitely something we should do. I'm excited to see you come back, Radomir, and start poking at it. And yeah, we'll make it better for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, but my intention was that wait for frame would give you that, like, the basic... That only wait for frame only helps you if you're faster than the refresh rate. It doesn't help you if you're slower right now.
Well, it helps you when you are faster, but then you still have to wait with your game logic, right? To not have the game too fast because there was some optimization recently and your code is running faster,
right?
Or something like that. So you still have to like have ticks on the wall clock time thing. So yeah. I'm thinking maybe this is where the async stuff would work too.
Okay.
So this is a bit big then.
Yeah, let's think about it. I like the Pico 8 model of like, you either write your game logic to be 30 frames a second or 60, and then like it handles the like, oh, it was really slow, so let me just like skip this expense of like pushing pixels to the display and just like move on and run your game code again. Because all of the partial updating code that I wrote is totally okay with you like skipping frames, essentially, where like it keeps track of where it was rendered last time and you can move it around multiple times
yes, of course,
in that process, which is good.
But it's still nice, especially if you have like only 2 frames of animation. It's nice to be able to synchronize with the animation, not like with the frames, so that you don't have like two frames in a row, or you don't move by 1.5 pixel and then it moves 1 pixel, 1 frame, and 2 pixels another frame, and that really looks really bad.
Right.
So yeah.
Well,
I realize it's reconciling 2 worlds.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm seeing with the Celeste code that I have right now is like, as my character moves, I'm actually moving X and Y separately, and like there's right now nothing preventing you from like moving one direction and then moving the other direction the next frame, because we'll update as soon as we can. So yeah, it's definitely something that we need to work on. All right, that was a long, awesome in the weeds discussion. Let's just do Dan and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, this is it's more vague.
And now for something completely different.
Right. So one thing I've been doing in BLEIO stuff is that I've been trying to minimize the amount of code that's in C, and even the types that are in C in the native module, in the BLEIO module. So there are some classes in there, for instance, that don't do like string parsing. You just pass in a bunch of bytes, and I would do the string parsing like in a wrapper class or something like that. So a question is, those of you who have done some BLE code, whether we should make the BLEIO library be like really, really internal, and maybe even name it _BLEIO, so that its API is not considered to be public, so that we can change it without bumping the version numbers all the time, or we can change it merely by we'll have to keep the library synced up with what's going on in the image, but that's sort of an idea. Or whether we should, still make a public interface for people who want to do lower level BLEIO, and kind of guarantee that there is an API that survives during a major version number. And I just know, like, maybe Jerry or some other people have some opinion about what they're doing, what we're doing in that case. Like, for instance, UUIDs, the functionality of UUIDs is actually perfectly adequate in BLEIO. So I could make a wrapper class, or I could just say, well, if you want to use UUIDs, use BLEIO.UUID. Or should I have an Adafruit _BLE.UUID class, which is just like a renaming or a wrapping of the other class? That's an example. Maybe I'm not being so clear, but I'm trying to say, like, should the lower level thing be exposed as it is in display IO and digital IO and so forth? Most of our native modules are not meant to be so internal. They're meant for general use as well.
I think I like the idea of going to internal for 5.0. That doesn't preclude us from moving back to a public model later once it's really settled down. But I think that by basically exempting ourselves from major version numbers for a little while for BLE is not a bad thing, and using the library to provide some stability is fine. So yeah, I like the idea of at least temporarily going to a world where it's _BLEIO, and then you can provide the guarantees about the UUID, for example, its API, simply by, like, in your wrapper library, importing the object and just saying UUID equals _BLEIO.UUID. For the time being, right? But that still gives you the flexibility, if you do want to change it, to wrap it then properly.
Right. We do have to either make the library. We still have to sync up the library. If we make incompatible changes, either we have to put code in the library that handles both the old and the new internal interface,
Right.
or we have to tell people what to do. And if we sort of say like, oh, you can only use this version of library with 5.2 or something, that's kind of worse than just incrementing the major version number. So
Right.
kind of thinking about it sort of both ways.
Yeah, but you can also do backwards compatibility if need be.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of work in this vein. Like, as you get Central going and we figure out the like Beely as a supervisor service stuff, right? Like, what does Beely mean outside of the context of user code in the VM?
Mm-hmm.
So I think having that flexibility to just really experiment by making it internal for a while is fine. Like,
right.
Very few people are using it publicly now, and so.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you might say that the same is true of display I/O in the long run if we might write enough display libraries, but we've been careful to make it kind of more useful at that level, for instance, or something.
Right. I mean, I think in general, like, I kind of like the idea of moving this to this model. Like, the early stuff really is underscore something for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should do more of that as we go forwards.
All right. Well, I'll try that and see. I'll try it, think about it both ways and see what makes sense. But I'll definitely am open to that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and remember, we can always change it later.
That's right. We can always change it back.
Yeah, I mean, Python's really forgiving when it comes to naming and substituting one thing for another. Is like, even for imports, like, if you had original code that was underscore BLEIO and we change it to not, you can still import BLEIO as underscore BLEIO if you're too lazy to search and replace.
Yeah.
Like that's okay. Or you're trying to be backwards compatible. Like, that would be another reason to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's fine. All right.
Okay.
We're over an hour and 10 minutes, so let's wrap this up. Thanks, Dan. This was the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly for June 17th, 2019. This happens every week on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join by going to the URL adafru.it/discord. We chat in the CircuitPython text channel along with the voice channel for CircuitPython. Everyone is welcome to attend, either full-on, like, chatting about everything or just lurking. Either one is fine. We'd love to hear about projects, house remodel, desk, or office cleaning. That's all good. We like to hear about it all. And it was recorded. It will go up on YouTube later today. It will be in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which has lots and lots of really good things. So I suggest everybody subscribe at adafruitdaily.com. That newsletter is publicly developed. There's a GitHub repo, so if you have projects you've done and you want to get the word out, or blog posts you've done about CircuitPython, let us know. We'd love to include it, and we'd love to have you as an editor for that newsletter as well. So feel free to reach out if that's interesting. And notes will go up with the videos as well, so if you don't want to watch the whole thing, although I'm talking about this at the end, so you probably listened to it all. And with that, we'll chat with everybody next week.
Thanks, everyone.